Hello and welcome to another edition of the Shankly Gates Podcast. I'm David, joined tonight even by Dan and Paul. Nice to see you both. It's been a while. Me and Dan were saying just before we started. It's been a fair old time since I've seen both of you. So pleasure to have you both here tonight. In this show, we'll be talking obviously about Watford on Saturday. Looking ahead to that. Obviously, they've got a new manager. We'll go into that in a bit more detail. We'll take a look at Mohamed Salah's ongoing contract situation. And it's time to reflect on 6 years of Jurgen Klopps at Liverpool. It's been a hell of a ride, so I'm sure that'll be plenty to talk about. First of all, Dan, how are you feeling, mate?
Yeah, all good, mate. Yeah, glad to be looking ahead to domestic action being back as opposed to the international stuff we've been served up over the past few days. So, yeah, I'm all good. And, yeah, definitely looking forward to the Reds being back.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you cope with international breaks? Because I think you've got to have a strategy to get through it. Do you just accept it's football and watch it, or is there something else you do with your time?
To be fair, I have watched a few more games than usual during this international break. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Tend to just focus on games Liverpool involved in. Like I watched Scotland twice for Andy Robertson's sake. And to be fair, I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Scots. I quite like watching them. And obviously they've one decent game as well, but mainly just see family that I don't normally see when the Liverpool are around, and throw myself into work a little bit deeper, to be fair, keep myself busy.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to have a strategy to get through it. Paul, speaking of soft spots for Scots, that's quite a tongue twister. That actually, I've done well to get that out. Have you been watching Scotland, and what's your strategy for getting through international? We say international week, it's like 2 weeks, and it's like a fortnight.
Yeah, no, I normally go to try and go to some non-league games, local non-league games. So I'm honestly not interested in international football. I'd rather watch paint dry. I really would. So I have been to the odd couple, and they are like watching. They are like watching paint dry, most of them. So no, I'll try and turn up somewhere. I actually on Saturday went to Chadderton against St Helens Town over near Oldham, just to get out the house and take a game in.
Yeah, I should say, Dave. I should say at that point, I went to watch Rainhill against Marshall Saturday, just to give them a shout out. Marshall's on the wrong end of the result, unfortunately, for my sake, but should mention them while we're on it.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the better ways to get through an international break. Going and watching non-league. I usually turn off from football altogether, and I'll just watch like a new series. I'll say turn off from football altogether. It was Ted Lasso this international break, so not quite fully off football, but there or thereabouts. Anyway, thankfully, no more international football for another month, maybe. So we've got proper football back. Obviously, Liverpool will take on Watford on Saturday, the early kickoff, so we don't have to wait very long for the Reds to be back in action. The major talking point really going into this, aside from the fact that Watford have got a new manager, is of course that Alisson and Fabinho are going to be unavailable. There was going to be a few more unavailable, but we'll get to that in a minute. Dan, for you, obviously Alisson not playing, is that massive? And how do you feel about Kevin Kelleher taking over?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with Kelleher taking over. If we'd have had this sort of conversation, I want to say about 12 months ago, when it was probably still Adrian was our number 2, I'd have been more concerned. But having seen what Kelleher's done when he's come into the side, I am as comfortable as you can be when, in my opinion, the best goalkeeper in the world's missing. I think Kelleher has done well. And I think, listen, Watford pose threats. We're going to talk about them in more detail later on. But this isn't the Champions League final. This isn't Man City the other week, because Alisson kept us in that game for 45 minutes, in my opinion. So I'm okay with it. I'd rather it was Alisson, but I'm all right.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Obviously, losing Alisson's massive, isn't it? But at the same time, Kelleher's done all right. Paulie made his international debut in midweek, and as we've just been saying, we don't really watch international football, but it's big for him. How do you think Kelleher's going to be coping with this? Because he'll have known before he went on international break, he's going to play the first game back. He's going to know, because we all knew Alisson wasn't going to be available. How do you think mentally he's prepared for that? Is it good pressure or bad pressure?
I think he'll be okay. I think, it's not his debut, so he has played before for Liverpool in the first team. I know, obviously, he made his international debut. last night, I think it was, or a couple of nights ago against Qatar in a friendly, kept the clean sheet, I believe. So, I think that's probably good preparation for him going into the game, and it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool might have even had a little bit of an input into that and said, with it being a friendly, any chance you can give him a bit of game time because we know he's going to play on the following Saturday. So I think he'll be prepared for it. He looks like he's got a good head on his young shoulders. He seems to be a bit more of a quieter character. I don't think he's quite as out there as some young players that we've seen over the years. So I think that the pressure will be just fine. And I know Dan mentioned Adrian, and I totally agree with Dan that I'm a lot more confident with Kelleher in goal than Adrian. But having said that, again, Adrian did come in when we had a lot of defenders out injured and stuff as well, which didn't help him. And I suppose that's going to benefit Kelleher in the fact that, he is going to play behind a strong back four. So I think he'll be fine. I think he will have nerves, of course he will, like anybody would. But I think, overall, he'll settle just fine.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think he'll be all right. I think, as you say, it's not a massive game, as Dan was saying. It's Watford away. It's quite big. Obviously, it's the Premier League, and you're back from the international break. You're the first game on, but he's just got to put that all to one side and just clear his head. And as you say, full strength back four in front from there or thereabouts. We'll get to that in a minute. Dan, I'll come back to you with this one. And obviously, Alisson unavailable, also Fabinho unavailable. We've spoken many times. I think every Liverpool fan understands how good Fabinho is and how important he is to this team. What will be the impact of him missing from this game?
Yeah, huge. I was going to bring it up earlier on in the Alisson conversation, really, because I think Fabinho's loss is bigger than Alisson's, to be honest. We've seen it all last season, and I was banging the drum on here every week about getting him back into midfield somehow. Before we brought Nat Phillips and Reece Williams into the side as a permanent feature, we obviously seen Fabinho at centre-back. And as good as he was, because he did do a good job back there, we were just exposed time and time again in midfield. And I worry about that on Saturday. I worry about not having Fabinho there as a defensive midfielder, and as much as we all love Jordan Henderson, he's nowhere near the six that Fabinho is. So it's going to be a serious loss to us. I still think we should have enough of the ball to dictate what happens in the football match. So I'm still confident that we'll be okay. But like I say, we've seen for 5 months of last season, no Fabinho in defensive midfield, not just in the side, is a massive loss to this team.
Absolutely, yeah. Paul, are you in agreement with Dan there? And do you think that Henderson will be the man that comes in to replace Fabinho?
I'm 100% in agreement with Dan. Like he rightly says, we only have to point to last season, and Fabinho was still in the side, but he wasn't in that holding midfield position, and it would cost us week after week. And I like Dan was banging my head against a brick wall, thinking just put square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes. Play a midfielder in midfield and play a centre half at centre half. So I totally agree with Dan in terms of how much of a loss he's going to be. I think in addition to that, I'm trying to sort of struggle to think who will go there, because obviously, we're not sure whether Thiago is going to be available, and I know Klopp said that it's unlikely today that he's going to be available. Do we put James Milner in there? And can he sort of do that job as a six? Or like you guys have just mentioned, do we put Henderson in there? I think if we put Henderson in there, we take away a little bit of his energetic sort of, runs getting forward and that type of role that he likes to play, sort of being on the right of the three sometimes. So I think it's a difficult choice, and I think Fabinho will be a huge miss. For me, I don't know if I'd potentially go for a midfield three of maybe Naby Keita, maybe Curtis Jones and Henderson, and maybe put a little bit of rotation in there. So there's not actually a sort of six per se who sits there all the time, but they sort of rotate it between them and take, two go and one sits type thing, and they sort it between them.
In a very similar fashion to how the front three function, it's just a case of whoever fits in where does that job. I think we can honestly say Jones won't play in that six role. He wasn't great there against Norwich. That's certainly not his position. Obviously, the whole situation where he picked up a little bit of an injury and then he played for England under-21s during the break, whether Klopp decides not to risk him or not. That could be another thing to watch. But, obviously, I think it's going to be between Henderson and Milner for me, who sits there. Probably Keita comes in, and who knows, maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain, is he fit to play? Is he ever fit to play in the midfield? We'll have to wait and see until Saturday. Speaking of team selection, then obviously we heard that, we were under the impression that Trent Alexander-Arnold would miss the game. We've now heard that he's expected to be available. Diogo Jota was sent home early from international duty with a muscle injury. So we were obviously as well a bit concerned about him. Again, today it's been pretty much confirmed that he should be available for selection. Those two, Dan, for you, is that great news for Liverpool to have those two in contention to play?
Yeah, huge news. And I think more so in what we're talking about in terms of the midfield, because obviously losing Fabinho is a massive loss, but getting Trent back gives us Milner back. So it's far from ideal. In an ideal world, we'd have everyone available. Thiago, as Paul mentioned, we'd have, Harvey Elliott would be back and all that sort of stuff. But getting Trent and Jota back for this weekend gives us options again. Because at one point, a couple of days ago, you start kind of mapping out an 11 in your head and you don't really have a choice. And when you're in a situation, it was like last season, we were kind of picking 11s based on who was left standing. And it looked a little bit like that this week. But now, with those two back, we've got some sort of, rotation available to us.
It's funny you should mention that period that we've picked up on now a few times last season where it was dark. Since then, Liverpool are now unbeaten in the last 17 Premier League games. And they could become the first ever English top-flight side to score 3 or more goals in 7 consecutive away games in all competitions. That was a bit of a mouthful, that, wasn't it? So they could become the first ever English top flight side to score 3 or more goals in 7 consecutive away games. Paul, did you understand that? Because I've already forgot it by the time I finished.
Just about.
Yeah. What do you think of that then? Obviously, looking back to that period that we've spoke about a couple of times, to then go on a 17-game unbeaten run and have that record to potentially aim for. What do you make of that?
I think it goes in line again with what we've just mentioned in terms of Fabinho going back into midfield, and sort of putting centre halves at centre half and thing. That was the start of it. We then had, a couple of hiccups where, in my opinion, at Leeds and against Newcastle, we maybe should have won the game and didn't. And then, we had obviously the things like Alisson's goal in the 94th minute at West Brom and things. So, it's not been all plain sailing. However, that is what good sides do. They win games, when the chips are down and things. This season, we've had a relatively decent start. I think, the likes of Chelsea and City, obviously, we're getting points off, and then winning the other games. But Watford is not a happy hunting ground. We've not been great there. And I'm just trying to think over the last few years. I know we've had a couple of 3-0 defeats. I think we've had a 3-3 draw. And then the only win I can remember over the last sort of 5 or 6 years is a 1-0 when Emre Can scored the overhead kick. So, it's not been a great place for us to go. So I think for us to hopefully go down there and score 3 goals, I think we'd be doing very well. And if you do go down there and score 3 goals, I'd be hoping to come back with 3 points as well. I think it'll be difficult. I think Claudio Ranieri isn't going to be as open as the previous manager. I think he'll start on getting his players sort of, hard to beat, difficult to break down. He's an Italian, that we know how they all play. It's sort of 10 and 11 men behind the ball. And I think he'll, as I say, sort of start that as a basis to work on, with maybe trying to hit us on the break. So I think, trying to go there and score 3 goals, if we do, absolutely, I'll be made up, but I think it'll be a difficult task. I really do.
Speaking of 3 goals, I'm on a bit of a stats mission tonight. In 6 of the 7 Premier League meetings between these two teams, you've seen at least one team score 3 goals. So that surely can't happen again this weekend. Surely 6 out of 7 times someone scored 3 times. Not happening. We are, of course, live on Facebook and YouTube. A couple of people putting comments in. Debbie and Steve are watching. Thank you, Debbie. And then Michael Sutton says, "Great show, guys. Thank you. Thank you for watching." We are live again just after the game. It'll probably be Sunday or Monday. We're not sure yet. It'll be somewhere around there. So join us again. Do join us again. And hopefully we'll be on Spotify and stuff in the near future. Paul, you've mentioned Ranieri there, so I'll stick with you for this one. You know, a new manager coming in. What have Liverpool got to be sort of wary of facing a team with a new manager? What's the threat?
I think the difficulty is always that you don't quite know how they're going to set up. You don't quite know how they're going to play. You've got no videos to analyse as such. You know, you can look at his styles at previous clubs, but, you know, essentially he might have different styles of players, different types of players that he's working with. You know, you can look at his Leicester side. He was pretty much sort of 4-4-2 and, you know, hit the channels for Vardy to chase and stuff like that. Is he going to do that with Ismail Assar? We don't know. But, you know, as I say, I think sort of knowing how experienced he is, I think he's going to try and make it difficult. I think any manager who wants to play open, expansive football against Liverpool, unless you've got a very, very good side, you know, i.e. the likes of Pep Guardiola, who's got the players to be able to do that, you're probably glutton for punishments. So I think he'll probably try and keep it tight. And I think Liverpool are going to go into it maybe a little bit blind, as I say, because you can't do any homework on them. And I think you've got to sort of learn on the job and learn quickly. You know, and potentially use the first half to do your analysis, really. You know, maybe we don't need to go gung-ho in the first half and maybe just try and work them out a little bit and then have a little look in the second half and see if we can exploit any weaknesses that we find.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Obviously, you'd like to think that a leopard never changes its spots, but you don't know how long Ranieri's had off and how much he's thought about his tactics and what he... You know, he's probably looked at his Watford team for about a week maybe and tried to pick some strengths and some weaknesses to work around. But it's obviously very difficult for Liverpool to plan for. Dan, do you think they should just be more worried about playing their own game rather than concerning themselves with Watford?
Yeah, this is definitely one for that, isn't it? We actually played Watford last time in the Premier League with Nigel Pearson's first game in charge at Anfield. And we were pretty much, I say in control. I think we were 1-0 up for a long time. It took a late Salah goal, that back heel, pretty much on the goal line to actually secure the game. And I think this could be similar in terms of, like you say, we can't really plan for what Ranieri's Watford side's going to do because it doesn't exist yet. So we may as well go there and try and dictate the game. I do think Ranieri will be quite fearful of us. And I'd be surprised, like Paul alluded to, if he came and tried to dictate the game. To be honest, I think they'll be very watchful and very, you know, protective of keeping it tight for a long period of time, which probably suits us while we try and work out what their game plan is. But yeah, I think, listen, we're a better side than them, aren't we? So we should go there and dominate the game, really. I know, it's like Paul alluded to again, it's not been a good place for us. We all remember what happened when they ended our unbeaten run and the Saar run riot and etc. etc. But the one saving grace we have got this week, because everyone always talks about new manager bounce, is the fact that it's been an international break in a weird way. Because Ranieri's going to have 72 hours to deal with his squad and implement what he wants. That's not very long, and that's probably not even the full squad with the international scenario with everyone flying back. So he's really not going to get much chance to work with him. So his impact might not be seen for a couple of weeks, yeah. So it might actually work out to be a good time to play him.
Yeah, hopefully. Paul, Dan mentioned there about the whole situation of the 44-game unbeaten run, and obviously Watford pretty much ended that. Liverpool's chase for the Invincibles record that Arsenal had. Obviously, it's quite a similar squad that we've got now still to that team. Do you think there'll be any thought of revenge going into this game?
To be honest with you, I don't think Liverpool think of revenge. I think we just think of going into each game and getting 3 points regardless of what's happened previously. I mean, if you look back at that game, I think they targeted Lovren, didn't they? And, you know, Troy Deeney sort of had a bit of a field day and bullied him, really. You know, both of them players are not in the two squads anymore. Obviously, Lovren's moved on and Troy Deeney's moved on from Watford. So I think it'll be a totally different game, regardless of how many similar players there is in the Liverpool squad. Certainly, I think Watford are quite different. You know, they've had quite a bit of a turnover. They've brought in a little bit of experience. They've brought in the likes of Danny Rose. You know, we all know they've got the likes of Ben Foster, who was already there in goal, and you know, Tom Cleverley, that type of player who have been, you know, around in and around the Premier League for a number of years. So it's not going to be easy, and I think there will be some thoughts maybe in the Watford camp about how they've done that and potentially trying to repeat that. But I think Liverpool have got to learn the lesson from that. Maybe, you know, if you need to double up on Salah, then double up on him, and sort of not necessarily forget that game, but learn from it, put it to the back of your mind, and just go in with a fresh mindset that it's a new game. You know, it's a new squad, and it's in terms of the Watford squad, and it's, you know, it's a totally different season. It's a different manager. It's completely different.
Yeah, hopefully Sadio Mane will have had a word with Ismail Assar. Just told him to just take it easy, lad. We'll sign you in January or something like that. Just take it easy. Dan, on a serious note, is he quite clearly their biggest threat on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. I've had a look at a couple of things this week based on him, work-wise, and yeah, he's got 4 Premier League goals already, and that's not really to be underestimated in a side that have just sacked the manager for what's perceived to be underperforming. You know, as an individual, that's pretty good. And his championship record last season, I think the championship's a properly decent league, and it's obviously really competitive, and he was incredible. Like, fair play to him. So we've seen it firsthand as well, let's not forget. He is by far their biggest threat. He had a field day that day against us, but I just felt like we weren't at the races that night whatsoever. It felt a little bit akin to sort of the Aston Villa night in a way. And it just felt like everything we did was wrong for whatever reason. We just had one of the nights where things just didn't click for us at all. And that's not to take away from both those sides' performances, because they were obviously very good. But we did let them play. And that's the one thing we can't afford to do on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how it goes, but it's time for predictions. Dan, I might as well stick with you first. How's this game going to pan out, and what scores it going to be?
Well, again, referencing your 3-goal stat, I've already written it down.
I've got another one waiting for you, by the way.
I haven't had a pen in my hand the whole time, but exacting a little bit of revenge, and just I've been so impressed with us so far this season. And for all the things we spoke about, I've gone for a 3-0 Liverpool win. Okay,
Paul?
I think it'll be a bit sort of closer than that. And I think we may see a late-ish goal, you know, sort of 80 minutes onwards. And I think if we've got any ambitions to be pushing for titles and things, we've got to go there and win. So I'm going to go for a late winner after 80 minutes for a 1-0.
Okay. The other stat that I've got for you is that Liverpool have never lost back-to-back league games against Watford, and obviously it would be back-to-back, the last one being so far away. So I'm going to go 4-2 Liverpool. I fancy us for a couple of goals. We seem to score more away from home.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-2. Steve on YouTube is going for 3-1 Liverpool. So again, quite close, and that continues the theme of team scoring 3 or more goals. Obviously that kicks off Saturday 12:30. Don't miss it. Paul, what time are you leaving to get down there? It must be an early start.
7. Yeah, I'm going to leave at 7.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
It's not far, Watford, though, is it? Watford's all right.
Yeah, you miss all the London stuff out in that, don't you, as well? So
yeah,
not too bad at all. I've just given me Man United tickets away today as well, so I'm a bit gutted, mate. I have to talk to you about that when we finish. Right, let's move on to the whole situation with Mohamed Salah and his contract. We're seeing a lot of reports about, you know, he hasn't signed a new deal. Is he going to leave? He wants £300,000 a week. Liverpool don't want to give him it. And I just want to get your thoughts on it in general, whether we should sign him, whether he should be given whatever he wants, whether we should sell him. I don't know where we stand. So, Dan, I'll come to you first. Mohamed Salah, he comes to you and says, you know, my contract's running out. What are you going to do about it? How do you deal with that?
His form dictates that we should do whatever it takes, doesn't it? Let's be honest. Actually, again, I've done something on this today. He demands right now to be the highest earner at Liverpool Football Club? It's such a difficult one because I quite like the fact they've kept all the players on a bit of an even keel previously in terms of nobody is the standout earner. But now we've got this standout performer that, in my opinion, is currently the best footballer in the world. If his contract is running out, you have to tie him down. And not only that, one of the sort of things that's been spoken about with FSG is they don't like giving big contracts to players over the age of 30. Now, they've done it with Jordan Henderson. They've extended his contract to 31. And Salah is approaching 30, and he's showing that he's only just really reaching his peak. I think there was a report recently from The Athletic that said exactly that. And his form right now, his form has come at the perfect time for him in these contract negotiations. If he was sort of performing at a relatively okay level, he might not be able to dictate what he gets. But right now, like I say, he's absolutely incredible. So Liverpool just have to do whatever it takes to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say there about his form. I think if he was asking for this last season, you'd probably go, don't think so, mate. Because no one was in good form last season, to be fair. But this season, he's like a man possessed. And the thing that's really got me about Salah this season is he's gone from being this player that everyone assumes or perceives to be very greedy. And the first time I realised he's not like that this season was at Norwich on the opening day, where he's trying to set Mane up to score. And then he sets Firmino up, doesn't he, as well? He puts the ball back across and things like that. And I'm just thinking, that's Salah. Like, he's added this. Obviously, we all know he's a great goal scorer and he does the dirty work as well. He works hard. But now he's added this element to his game where he's trying to get assists as well. So I've got to kind of lean with you there, Dan. Paul, where do you stand on it, and what would your handling of the situation be?
I'm quite opposite to both of you guys, actually. I think, regardless of his form, which is absolutely outstanding at the moment, he's probably, as you say, form probably one of the best in the world at the moment. I think he's got to be careful what he looks for in terms of, how many times have we seen players want to boost, their earnings, get bigger contracts. They leave, go to other clubs, and the grass isn't always greener. And 6 months later, they're crying that they're not happy. We've literally just had one in terms of Wijnaldum coming out the other day saying that he's not happy because the grass isn't always greener. However, I think, we've got an absolute talent on our hands, which you don't want to lose. Now, the issue is we don't also want to end up in a situation like Barcelona where, we give Mo Salah, let's say, £300,000 a week for argument's sake. What's going to happen then is, the likes of Mane, maybe Firmino, their agents go in and go, well, if he's on 300, we want 280 or 250 or whatever. And then the next ones go in and go, well, if he's on 250, I want 250. And all of a sudden you get in a situation like Barcelona did, where you're paying very average players very inflated wages. And I think we've just got to be careful of what precedent we set going forward, because the next sort of player who then hits form for 6 to 12 months and is, banging goals in. I know he's been banging goals in for sort of 4 and 5 years, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is if we get to the point where, let's say, Harvey Elliott, for argument's sake, in 3 or 4 years' time is coming towards his next contract and he's done absolutely fantastic, do we then set a precedent where we say, well, we're going to have to start giving you £250,000 to £300,000 a week? So, yeah, we absolutely need him to stay at the football club. He's an absolute fantastic footballer. He's a talent, and I think the last sort of 12 to 18 months have showed us just how good he is. I also think that, short-termism could potentially damage the club in the long term, and we've got to be very, very careful on that.
It's the dynamic in the squad, isn't it? Especially you've just handed out a load of contracts to Van Dijk, Henderson, loads of contracts have gone out over the summer. And then you hand Salah this ridiculous contract. How do they feel, those players who've just had that money and gone, well, I complied with this wage structure and I stayed under, whatever you told me to, and now you've broke that for Salah. I'm thinking like Virgil van Dijk, for example, who'll just want, he's the best centre-half on the planet. How much is he going to demand? You've just got to be careful. But from a business standpoint, Paul, you are right, because FSG have been burned by Gini Wijnaldum this summer, and to an extent Emre Can. Not as big as Wijnaldum, because I think you could have commanded quite a reasonable fee for Gini. You can't let Mohamed Salah walk away for nothing. You can't do it. You've got to be very careful. And get. I think. I mean, did they have to tell everyone what they've given? Can we just, can they just lie and say, we only give them $100,000 a week, and just obviously no one's going to believe it, but it's the dynamic in the squad, isn't it? And I mean, at least Dejan Lovren's not here to tell everyone, because he'd probably tell him, his best mate, how much he's earned.
I think it's agents as well, though, David. It's, the agents would know straight away. And, as soon as they hear that one person's client is on X amount, they'll want their player to be getting Y amount. And that's where it escalates then. And that's the issue.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. And that's how everything gets out, isn't it, agents? That's we could talk about that pretty much all day. Stay on YouTube again has said that his record speaks for itself. Potentially the best player in the world. Even if he was asking for this money last season, he was deserving of it. Dan, I mean, that's kind of what you said, isn't it? Is that what do you make of what Paul was saying about the whole dynamics of it and the business of it? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I completely agree with the points he's made, to be fair, and certainly from in terms of the other players coming and saying, if he's getting that, then I want, a reasonably close amount. But at the same time, the players must recognise what Salah's doing and has done, and realise that, he might be deserving of a better wage structure than the rest of them. Not only that, I think obviously from a financial point of view from the club, they've got to take into account how much it would cost rather to sign a replacement for him, and the wages that player is going to demand, because Liverpool, in terms of basic wage, are actually quite a long way under a lot of clubs. It tends to be the bonuses that kickstart our wage bill really high. So, and obviously the bonuses last season weren't exactly flying out, considering we didn't win anything. So really, and in terms of what you spoke about with the players recently signing contracts, like, it's so difficult, because obviously from like a layman's point of view, like, we look at the wages they're all on and think, how could you possibly, in your right mind, even be slightly unhappy? But obviously they would be, because if Salah was to get $100,000 a week more than anyone else, there would be players who'd go, hang on a minute. But there's got to be a balance to be struck, hasn't there? And FSG, as much as we don't like them, and a lot of people don't like them, and people don't even want them in the club, they won't be held to ransom. Let's get it right. They won't be held to ransom. But at the same time, there's got to be some leeway. And that's all I want. I don't want us to go gung-ho and say, there's $500,000 a week, like was being reported weeks ago. That's crazy. But there has to be a middle ground that club, player, and agent, and by the way, on Salah's agent, he's probably the most vocal one out there. He's always on Twitter talking about different things. So that's all I want, that middle ground. And I think the club have to stretch some way for someone of the talent and ability of Mohamed Salah.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I wouldn't like to be, well, I don't know whether Michael Edwards will even deal with it, because he's allegedly off at the end of the year. But yeah, it's a situation that we need to monitor carefully, and hopefully we can get to a decent agreement with him and keep him on, because he's just an outstanding footballer. I mean, I think when he does eventually leave, we'll appreciate him more. At the moment, when you have that conversation of like Torres, Suarez, and Salah, even now I'll say Suarez, but I think once Salah goes and you realise, you'll go, actually, do you know what? Yeah. It was Salah. It was Salah all day long. Of course, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Emma's just commented. James, Emma, and Jim are watching. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Of course, we're live every week on Facebook and YouTube. Hopefully soon to be Twitter and Spotify and all other good podcast places as well. Before we wrap up tonight, gentlemen, some very positive, happy news and time to reflect. This week, I think was it Saturday or Sunday? I can't remember. Was 6 years of Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. It's absolutely flew, to be honest with you. I can remember Tottenham away that day very, very clearly. I also remember coming home on the train. We got the train to London that day, and we had to sit on the floor on the way home because basically the train had got like its numbers mixed up or whatever, and the people in our seats wouldn't move because they were like, we don't have to anyway. That's the thing I take away from the day. But the obvious thing was the first day of Jurgen Klopp, and then all the things that have come after it. I just wanted to ask you for your thoughts on a pretty magical 6 years, Dan, isn't it, really? Because, I mean, I tweeted this the other day. I remember working in another job at the time with a fella who said to me, if he doesn't win the league with Liverpool, nobody ever will. And quite clearly he did. He's a top manager. But what's your thoughts 6 years on from him joining the club, and probably what's your favourite memory as well?
Yeah, he is my favourite ever Liverpool manager for many reasons. Obviously, I wasn't born when, Shankly and Paisley were doing it. But from what I've seen in my lifetime, Jurgen Klopp, because no man has ever got the club like we do, and that might be a little bit unfair on those that have gone before him, but I just think he absolutely has embraced the football club and the city, and he's taken it to his heart. And it's not really a surprise when you look at his background, like we've obviously probably all done, and you look into his life. He had to work hard for everything he's ever done in football. He didn't have the most glamorous career, for instance, and he's made a career in terms of managerial out of making, these impossible dreams come true with Mainz and Dortmund overhauling Munich and all that sort of thing. You've never really done it the easiest way. And coming into Liverpool, who haven't won the Premier League at that time, to overhaul Manchester City was far from easy. So he was made for us, in my opinion. And it was pretty obvious from early days, to be honest with you. Everything he said, everything he did, even from, taking the players in front of the cop after that West Brom game and all that sort of stuff. He just completely, embraced us and continues to do so. So, yeah, love him to pieces, to be fair. But in terms of memories, there's a few that spring to mind. I won't go into too much detail because I want you boys, obviously, to have your say as well. But for me, what epitomises his 6 years with us so far, and best of all, was the aftermath from when we won the Champions League. That sort of 5-6 minute video that we've all probably seen as well, where he goes around everyone on the pitch, Liverpool and Tottenham wise, and he obviously, consoles the Tottenham players and what have you, but he's absolutely overwhelmed with emotion and hugs everyone. And it's the Jordan Henderson and Klopp moment in particular, having lost finals beforehand and come so close to trophies, to finally, win the Champions League with us and get that over the line. You could just see how much it meant. So that's my favourite Klopp moment so far.
Yeah, that's tough to top, that one. That would have been my suggestion. So I'll get thinking. And Paul, I'll come to you. Same question. 6 years on, thoughts on his reign, and obviously favourite memory as well.
Yeah, I think obviously, Dan's summed it up pretty well. 6 years when he came in, he sort of proclaimed himself, if he had to, as the normal one. And I think that was his way of saying, look, I'm just one of you. I'm a normal working class fella. Like Dan said, he's worked his way through. I think he once described himself as having, sort of first division brain, but second division ability, which made himself into a half decent footballer. And I think that shows in the 6 years he's been at Liverpool that he might not have been able to do it as a player, but he certainly knew what he wanted to do as a player, because he's been able to sort of transfer that across and his ideas across to his Liverpool team and obviously his Dortmund and Mainz team before. So you look at managers when they come in and what they sort of talk about, and from day one it was always going to be a journey. It was never going to be straightforward. It was never going to be sort of, and I use this very, very loosely, but a bit of a Chelsea thing or something, where if you don't win you don't win the league after 6 months, you're sacked and all this sort of stuff. It was always going to be longevity. A bit of a sort of love affair, really. And, you go through, and a couple of my sort of poignant moments, not necessarily favourite moments, have all involved Tottenham. So obviously the first game that we played was at Tottenham. I think one of the most poignant moments was the day we got absolutely hammered at Wembley by Tottenham 4-1 in the league game. And that changed a lot. I think since that, after that, until we won the league, I think we'd only lost something like 3 in 70 odd games or something. That really, really sort of changed Liverpool's mindset that day. And obviously one of the other ones that involved Tottenham was the Champions League final, like Dan's just said, and he didn't run off celebrating and look what I've done or look what we've done like certain other managers would do. He went round and he consoled the losing team, and that just shows, I suppose, what type of a man he is. He's a socialist. He's he is Liverpool. He gets the club, and I know that Shankly said that he was made for Liverpool and Liverpool was made for him, and I think that in a sense that sort of suits Klopp as well. We've had some late goals, which I sort of look back at the amount of times. We've had games where we've scored really, really late goals to go on and win the game. I can think of a few at Selhurst Park. I can think of the Norwich game, the 5-4. Off the top of my head, Aston Villa, you're 1-0 down with 3 minutes to go and you win 2-1 and that type of thing. And, even in the Champions League where, Paris Saint-Germain, we scored late goals and obviously went on to then win the tournament. So it's just, it's that never say die attitude that he's instilled in the club. And I suppose my favourite moments was pretty obvious that, it was something that we'd waited for so long. And it was getting to see the players, I know we couldn't be there in the ground, but we wouldn't have been there in the ground anyway, because the night we won the Premier League was Chelsea had played Man City. So it was that video of them all sat together. They could have watched it at home separate, but they wanted to be together. And they went to Formby Hall, obviously hired out, the sort of hotel, and spent that night together to celebrate. And that for me was one of the most heartwarming moments, because it was just something that we'd waited for so long. Yeah,
it's so tough to pinpoint why we love Jurgen Klopp, because it's just everything. It's everything about the man. You've both put it absolutely spot on, and he just gets the city, he gets the club, he gets the fans, he just loves football. And I mean, okay, yeah, you can say he had an average playing career, but he'd scored a hell of a goal for Mainz, and he'll live off that for the rest of his life. You both know what I'm talking about. That ball comes over to the top, the far end of the box, and he just whacks it. If you haven't seen it, YouTube Klopp goal Mainz, and you'll see it. It's just mad, isn't it? Like, obviously, Dan, you said there he's your favourite manager. And, we've had some good managers. Like, I loved Rafa Benitez. Maybe not so much now, for obvious reasons. I love Brendan Rodgers when Brendan Rodgers was in charge.
As well.
Houllier, yeah, of course. Houllier was the man in charge when I was growing up, you know what I mean? Yeah. And, like, 2001 was ridiculous. You sort of think, like, this is supporting Liverpool. We win three trophies every year. It's great. But he just surpasses them, and that's no disrespect to those other managers that we've had. It's just a totally different level he's took us to. And, he created a team that, I mean, Manchester City are a great team because they build a team of players that, okay, people say they spend whatever they want, and they do, but they don't just spend every summer. They build a good team, and they've got the best team in the league. And we, ahead of the game against City recently, if you stacked up the stats or the points, I think, from a certain period of time up until, like, 2018 or something like that, Liverpool had one more point than Manchester City in total, and that is just some achievements in itself. And it's the selflessness about the man. He wants to do things for everyone else, and he's just, honestly, we are so lucky to have him.
Can I just touch on that, David, where you've just mentioned about the selflessness, because there's something that not many people know, is that obviously Liverpool Football Club set up the fan forums to have a say around ticketing issues, and there's a few of them. There's disability issues. There's quite a few different fan forums, and I was sat in one night about 2 or 3 years ago, and one of the comments from one of the employees of Liverpool Football Club was that if it wasn't for Jurgen Klopp and his involvement, that it wouldn't potentially have happened. And that was something that Jurgen Klopp had insisted on, behind the scenes. He's not shouted about it or anything like that, but behind the scenes, he had insisted on the football club liaising with the supporters on all issues that related to, the price of the match tickets and the availability of match tickets, who they go to, how we can get more children into the ground, local kids, and all this sort of stuff. And the manager of our football club insisted that the club approached the supporters and done that. And that just shows you, what type of man he is, that he's not only interested in the 11 on the pitch, but he's interested in the social and economic sort of benefits that, to the city and the local population as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another example of just what a great human being he is. Never mind football manager. He's one of the best on the planet. We all know that, but what a great human being he is as well. Favourite moment-wise for me, I'm not going to say the ones that you have just said. So I'll probably go for the one that instantly comes to mind. Excuse me. The one I love is when he goes up to the cop and gives it a big punch. But the one that does come to mind straight away is that celebration against Everton when Origi.
I knew it.
He just legs it on the pitch and hugs Alisson. And apparently him and Alisson are really close friends. Like him and Matip and Alisson are allegedly Klopp's favourites. I think Robertson said that on one of the YouTube videos a few years ago. And just the way he runs in and just goes mental with Alisson, and then, all right, he apologises after, which kind of lets it down a little bit. But that's the sort of man he is.
Yeah, he was all of us then, though, wasn't he? I think if we could have all done that, we'd have done it, because I was obviously there that day and hugging everyone, you know what I mean? Without a care in the world. And if we'd have had the chance, we'd have been on there with him, I reckon.
Definitely, yeah. 100%. And that's what I love about him. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and when things are going well, he's happy. And when things aren't going well, he does get ratty and he does get a little bit, moody with the media sometimes. But I like that. I like that about him. That just shows that he really cares and he loves it and he lives for it and he doesn't like getting beaten. There's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. So before we wrap up, I just want to get your thoughts on how much longer do you think we have of Jurgen in charge, Dan? I'll start with you.
I really hope it's beyond 2024, obviously, for all the reasons we just spoke about. But my heart says he will go again. My head says he won't, if I'm honest. My head says it will be 2024. And what that looks like, I'm not sure. Whether he takes he spoke about having a break from football, whether that's a break from football to go elsewhere. One scenario that did pop into my head when I was thinking about this was maybe Pep Lijnders takes over for a year, 18 months, whilst Klopp goes and then comes back. Who knows? That wouldn't be the worst case scenario in many ways. If it meant we got Klopp back, I'd take that. Just to say, in terms of who I'd go for, a lot depends on where Gerrard is in his career, doesn't it, at that time? Yeah. But other names, one that came to me earlier on, just say as well, was Thomas Frank at Brentford. Because they've got a similar model to what we use on just a lower scale, really, at Brentford. And he's done a hell of a job there. We all seen that firsthand last week. So maybe him or Nagelsmann would be the other one. But in an ideal world, Klopp forever, to be honest.
If only. Paul, go on.
Yeah, Dan, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I would just wish he could stay forever. Unfortunately, nothing ever lasts forever, does it? So, we do have to plan and for that day whenever it comes. He's contracted till 2024, I believe. Hopefully, he might sign another contract for a little bit longer, if he's still feeling fresh and, he's still got that sort of energy to do that. If not, I think I would prefer to maybe promote from within. I think for far too long now, we've sort of gone away from that. Liverpool built dynasties of success on promoting from within. And, we sort of went away from that model potentially. Maybe, I know we've mentioned about Houllier and things, but maybe a little bit after Roy Evans type thing, we sort of veered away from that. We've still won trophies and things that, that is undeniable. But I think for me, I would prefer to maybe go back to the old way of promoting from within. And I think Pep Lijnders is a very good shout. He's worked under Klopp now for a number of years. Klopp seems to like him. He brought him from the academy. I think he left and went to Holland, didn't he? And also come back again. And then, maybe somebody like James Milner, as a number two or a coach with him or something. Again, he's clever. He's learned the game. He's done a lot in the game over the sort of 18, 19 years, whatever it is that he's been sort of in and around top flight football. So, for me, I would just prefer to maybe keep the traditions as they are and potentially promote from within and maybe evolve rather than, a bit of an evolution rather than revolution, as it were.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely, I'm on that side of Linda's taking over. As much as we all know Gerrard's going to be in charge one day, I think Gerrard, it'd be best, maybe not for him, but for the club to come in when we're in a little bit of like turmoil, you know, a la Dalglish to an extent. Come in and get everyone back together and build something. I don't think it's right to bring him in after Klopp. It's almost like Henderson taking over from Gerrard in captaincy. He gets to learn that, you know, how do you succeed, Jurgen Klopp? And I think the best way to do it would be to just sort of pass it on to Linders and then build from within. And I think James Milner's a great shout to add him into the coaching setup because he commands so much respect from not just the pros in his own team, you know, opposition players, pundits, fans like us from across the country. You can't not appreciate, I know that's a double negative, you have to appreciate James Milner for who he is. And I think that's a good shout. But I mean, I'm with you both. If somebody can find a way to keep Jurgen Klopp alive for like forever, for like 200 years, let's do it. Let's do it to him. There's definitely going to be a statue outside Anfield somewhere in probably 10 years' time. This time in 10 years' time, there'll be a statue. Obviously, we were all kind of expecting him to go, was it this year? And then he signed a new contract. I think it was the end of this season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have
we
been,
were all sort of like dreading that. I'd like to think he'd sign a new contract, but I can't see it. So unfortunately, yeah, that's going to be a sad day when he walks away. It's going to be really sad. Gentlemen, anything to add before we sign off for this week?
Don't think so. No, all good.
I think we've ticked all boxes.
No, it's just nice to be back for us, isn't it? I think
it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. I've missed it. I've certainly missed it. So yeah, Liverpool take on Watford on Saturday. We'll be back Sunday or Monday, depending on when we're all available. To have an overview of that game and obviously look ahead to Atletico Madrid in midweek, and then who have we got after that? It's not United after that, is it?
It is, yeah. United Man United,
Sunday,
yeah.
United after that, yeah. That's come round quick. Brilliant, gentlemen. Thank you as ever for your time. Thank you to those of you who watched on Facebook and YouTube. We'll be back again on Sunday or Monday. We'll speak to you all again soon. Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.